Number 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA, online at the Big1050.com. And of course, a great day here in Southeast Michigan. When you talk about sports, you got the Tigers, not today, thankfully, because it'd be a quagmire down in Detroit. Of course, doesn't stop it from being a quagmire coming up this weekend. But you got the Pistons opening up playoff action down at LCA in Game 3. You're going to have the NFL Draft tonight, where we hope 4 Wolverines get selected in the first round. Of course, you just heard us talking to Bonnie Toll about the Softball Academy, which is this evening. So looking forward to that. But fellas, the MGoBlog Roundtable here. We're going to start with reflections, spring game reflections with you, the crew. Starting off, Brian Cook, good morning. How are you?
I think Brian's muted.
I think you are.
Brian.
Does that describe your review of the spring game?
There
I was muted, but now I have returned. Yeah, so the spring game happened. I wrote up the offense and the defense, and I realized that by the time I got to the defense that I didn't really have anything to say because all I focused on was the 2 quarterbacks. So, like, it was a very strange experience because, like, usually you're like, well, quarterbacks and then some other stuff, but this time it was just like, nope, we haven't seen these guys at all.
Yeah.
And one of these guys is almost certainly the starter, so that was the whole focus.
Yeah. Seth Fisher, and I'll let you introduce your special guest.
This is Mira Fisher. It's Take Your Kid to Work today. So Mira, say hi.
Hello.
She also come to me the spring game. Now I was imagining when I went to the spring game, like Brian's probably gonna be watching the quarterback. So if I watch the line, then maybe I'll learn some things to be able to share. And after about 5 minutes of that, I realized I'm a Michigan fan. I need to watch Bryce Underwood, and that didn't last very long. So I'm looking forward to Saturday where I can actually watch this game that I watched, because I was mostly just focusing on the quarterbacks and watching passes sail over receivers who are too small and not open. But I'm excited for playoff basketball in Detroit tonight. That's been a while since that happened.
Yeah, playoff basketball where they're actually expected to do something and they can actually do it. Yeah, that's going to be the case, I think, again tonight. Craig Ross, how are you?
I'm doing fine. I just want to mention, as I do every year or so, that Brian wasn't here last week, but this is the birthday of J. Fred Muggs, or last year, and indeed J. Fred Muggs is still alive and doing well. I know our listeners will be interested in hearing that. In terms of the spring game, I was sort of the opposite. I'm always sitting by myself in the end zone between the goalposts at around row 50, because I want to watch the line play and I don't care about the other stuff. I mean, I care about it, but I know in the spring, that's, I'm looking pretty much at the offensive line on both sides as best I can. I was reasonably dismayed but I'll wait until I see the film. But I was reasonably dismayed. But then I come out of every spring game being dismayed, because it's never as good as I hope it will be. And of course, it's always impossible, because it looks like Michigan's defense is going to be a real load again. And the offensive line has got a bunch of guys who may not actually play together by the time that, it comes around. So I don't know how Bryce Underwood did. I'll wait and see. I was just watching the offensive line.
So let's start with your observation, Ryan. That we talk about his progression in practice, try to give some perspective, and then he goes out. I think the stat line was 12 for 26.
That's right.
12 for 26, 187, and a touchdown and an interception. So once you get inside those numbers, your take on what you saw from Rice, and what you saw from Jaden too, for that matter.
Well, I mean, without Donovan McCulley out there for most of the game, it was very clear that there weren't a whole lot of options just in terms of where to go with the ball. So, I'm watching these routes develop, and particularly on a lot of the half field rollouts, like Michigan has these just covered. And so he's trying to fit the ball in tiny windows to guys who are, not first round draft pick kind of wide receivers. And so you get a lot of incompletions there. And then the other variety of incompletion were deep balls that were too flat. So he had a little bit of the Joe Milton going on when he had his deep ball going, where the angle of attack there just doesn't give your wide receiver the best opportunity to get to the ball. And then you have things like Browder with a is that a drop? Probably on a fade route down the sideline. So he didn't get a whole ton of help. And then because it's the spring game, you have one of the most important aspects of Bryce Underwood, virtually turned off, which is his ability to move.
Yeah.
So he had that one 20-yard scramble, and everybody was like, "Oh, that's intriguing." So, I kind of feel like he's a freshman. Had a couple delay game penalties. It's going to be a process this year with him. He's not going to start, jump into the starting lineup and meet Jameis Winston, because Jameis Winston had a red shirt, right? Like, he was a redshirt freshman when he broke out for Florida State. But there was a guy across the aisle from me who was already mad at him. and I got to be like, bro, the process.
That's perfect.
Process.
That's perfect, Ryan.
It's just like, come on. So I don't. You see the potential. You see how the ball pops off his arm when he lets it go, and he has more touch than Joe Milton ever did. But there's still some things that he needs to work on, and it's going to be a 1 or 2 year process to get there. Now, as far as Jaden Davis goes, like, that windup is improved, but still takes a long time to get the ball out there. And like, for him, you wanted to see him find open guys or have that kind of timing that you need to have as a smaller guy who's supposed to be polished, more precise. Not really sure I saw that. Like, I did like the fact that he hung that ball up to McCulley, because like, that's the guy who's going to be on the receiving end of a plurality or possibly even a majority of Michigan's deep balls this year. And it is a sin to overthrow Donovan McCulley in the same way it was a sin to overthrow Nico Collins or completely ignore him. But that's not really a topic for this podcast. So it feels like all the deep balls that are too flat don't jive with the best threat in your wide receiving group, which is McCulley, who was like a 67% guy in contested catches 2 years ago. So just give him an opportunity, and he will move the chains.
Yeah, I do want to say, and we were talking about this on our podcast, 'cause I think we disagreed on whether it was a good read or a didn't see it read. Devin Baxter is dropping out. That's the defensive lineman, and Bryce sees it and just barely fits it in past this dropping defensive end. I thought that was a good read. I thought he saw that he was, he sees a defensive end dropping, and he's like, okay, this is my window. And he's Bryce Underwood. He knows he can fit it in little windows. And Brian was like, nah, he just didn't see it. So that's kind of the one where I think we have to rewatch it and decide who was right there. But that was the most encouraging thing I saw. That, that's a pretty advanced read, right? And if then, like, if you see that and you go for it and you think you can do it, then that's really advanced for a true freshman. If you didn't see it, then you're like, oh, okay, never mind.
Coming out of that, do you guys feel like it's a priority for Michigan to pick up another wide receiver in the portal? I mean, I was somewhat surprised that we took 2 running backs. And
I mean, it's a priority
like
for me to make $1 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're just going to get the same guy in the portal right now.
That's okay.
They've gotten to the ceiling of what they can achieve as far as portal recruiting when it comes to that position, because they just don't have the proof to that will lure the kind of improvement that you're looking for when it comes to personnel at that position. It's just kind of is what it is. We're going to see more Donovan McCulley. You hope that you can grow a guy like Andrew Marsh up some. And then the fact of the matter, and this is, some of the plays that were missed, and this was my observation. Yeah, you had some throws that the young fella's gonna make that you just hope he grows out of. You you guys, he had the out that he stared out that was almost picked off by TJ Metcalf, right? You hope that's one that he learns from. He was, I thought, accurate on the short throws, the ones that you want him to make, the short timing throws, on time and on target. But he had one that he's a bubble that he skipped, but that was like kind of the exception to the rule on the ones that should be snappy, should be really good. But Brian is right. Some of those downfield throws were a little flat, but I thought the Browder one was one that's like, man, I mean, you want the receiver to be able to help him out on a play where he has a step and he puts it there and the ball is on his hands. And those were the plays that were maybe the ones that stuck out to me the most. Is I'm like, man, this is going to be a challenge for them this season, having to elevate many of the receivers. Is that going to be a theme, or are we going to see the receivers get to a point where they complement him more? Is that going to be McCulley's ability to do that a lot? Is Andrew Marsh going to be able to do that in ways that we didn't see a lot of receivers be able to do that on the field? He throws Joe Taylor open in the end zone. He's covered, but ball beats coverage there. You got to catch that ball. Or Jamar Browder down the sideline, you got to catch that ball, right? He gets some pressure going towards the north end zone, and he fits it into Hoffman. That's the kind of play that you need your guys to be able to make. Hoffman happened to make it on that play. Is he going to have receivers able to make plays like that routinely for him when he needs them to?
Well, we got to ask you something, Sam. How many targets is Jalen Hoffman getting this year? Like,
he looked really good.
He had a good day. Yeah, I can't say that's someone that I was looking to or expecting to be a factor. Maybe he works himself into some more opportunities. A couple, but we obviously didn't see a lot of guys. We aren't seeing Marlon Klein. We aren't seeing Max Brett. So, guys that are going to be really prominent in the mix. So that's the other thing that we have to temper ourselves when we talk about the personnel. But I think your point is spot on. McCulley is going to be so huge for them in terms of being a guy who can make plays for the quarterback. You talk about the Jameis Winston comparison. I heard a lot of people talk about Trevor Lawrence, and I get it. If you want to make the comparison to that team, maybe you could say the defense could be somewhat comparable, but there's nothing comparable about the offense, fellas. That offense that Trevor Lawrence stepped into that offense 4 games into the season. That's number one. After Kelly Bryant had it for a while, and then he steps into it, and you got Justin Ross, you got Hunter Renfrow, you got T. Higgins. Dude, you're throwing to NFL guys out there. I'm not saying that none of these guys are going to be pros, but they are established. Like all of those guys. One of those guys, I think Justin Ross was a freshman, but those guys were established like dudes, man. So, we gotta give this dude a little more grace than I think, you had to give Trevor Lawrence in that instance.
Yeah, and the other thing is I really want to see the receivers try to make plays on the ball. I think Samaj was also guilty of just not turning around. Like, they're trying to make basket catches. This is the thing we saw last year, too, where they're trying to make the catch on the run instead of adjusting, let the cornerback run you over a little bit, and try to, and adjust for it, make it a battle. You got one of those from McCulley. He brings it down, and then he just stands us out. He's like, okay, you've seen it. That's that's my day. But nobody else. Even Browder kind of, he's supposed to be a contested ball guy, right? That's what we recruited him to be. And he didn't really contest, right? He's trying to catch that on his shoulder. That's a much smaller catching window. So it's not, yes. Okay. You look at that Clemson team that Trevor Lawrence stepped into, and he had really good receivers. Dylan Raiola last year was a 5-star freshman for Nebraska. He didn't really have a lot of receivers. Those guys weren't really open. It didn't look great. He threw a lot of interceptions. He looked like a freshman quarterback, but it was a functional offense. And keep in mind where we were last year. We need to get to functional this year. We don't need to get to top 30 probably just need like you hit that top 60 level, and the defense is going to be good enough to keep you in contention because they're really good. So I think that no, we don't have the receivers. The question is, do we have a running game that can support the rest of the offense? And that's kind of why we want to go back and see the offensive line, because I don't think the passing game is going to be the lead of this team. Even if they say it is, it's not going to be the lead of this team.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that, Seth. I think if Michigan can run the ball, they'll have enough passing to get through. And, this season to me comes down to offensive line, and offensive line. Because I think the defense will be good. I think, we saw a good defense in the Alabama game without Michigan stars, without the tackles, without Will Johnson. Well, I'm not sure this defense is gonna decline from last year at all. Maybe a better defense than last year, from what I saw, and so that isn't worrisome to me. What's worrisome to me is, can they run the ball? If they can run it enough with Underwood's legs, or even with Mikey Keene, it isn't clear to me that he won't be the early season starter. I mean, just because he didn't play in the spring game
I
doesn't
saw
mean
Mikey Keene play Michigan. He's not
Yeah.
going to be the starter. Like,
Are you
there's
sure
no
about
point.
this?
There's
You're
no point.
sure?
Like Michigan's ceiling with Mikey Keene is lower than it is with Bryce Underwood. So
Oh,
just
the
roll with
ceiling
Bryce.
is no question that's true.
But like,
what
I
about
just
right
don't.
now?
I just don't see him as a Power 5 quarterback.
Okay. What do you think, Sam?
I think
Because
there'll
I
be
do.
I think there would be a competition. I think that
Mhm.
Bryce would have to. This is my opinion. I
Mhm.
think that he would have to regress. I think that I'm not saying that Mikey Keene can't win it, but I think he would have to be head and shoulder. They can't be even. Like Mikey Keene would have to be head and shoulder.
If they're even, then
He can't
Bryce
be,
Underwood is the starter.
he can't be a little bit better.
Right.
He has to be a lot better than Bryce
Mhm.
to make it make sense to go with him.
Yeah.
Because in that case, in that instance, Brian's right. You go with the upside guy,
Right.
the guy that's definitely going to be able to not only make you when you talk upside in the passing game, but the dimension that he could add to your run game as a threat. And another thing that you couldn't really see when you're watching him run the football, and he's doing these these fake reads that it's like this is not even it's like,
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Michigan's never done one of those live. I mean, that actually brings up a question I had for you, Sam. Are they going to run more zone read this year? Are they actually going to teach that? Are they going to bother with that? Because that's kind of one of the ways that you can open up this running game. That's kind of one of the ways that you can use Bryce's legs. I think that this program historically has believed that, that's how you injure players. But now they got an offensive coordinator who coached at Auburn for one of the, with one of the most quarterback running games in the country. He's done this before at several different stops. And I wonder if Chip's going to say to them, listen, guys, you got to do this. It's not going to get your quarterback killed. It's what's going to get your quarterback killed is having him sit there with no blindside protection on 3rd and 10.
Yeah. How good do they feel about Mikey Keene and Jaden Davis? Number one. And then I think you have to, how judicious are they with it? And then how good do you feel about your backups in that situation? I think it's a layered question, but I think it has to be a part of the equation because he's dynamic running he's better running the football than I think people know, and I don't think that's people's fault. I think that Belleville consciously made the decision to not run him a lot until last year. And then they started to run him, and then you started getting these insane, he's Vince Young. It's like, oh my God. I mean, we're going from one end of the spectrum to the other. Like, this is like a horrible comparison. He is not Vince Young at all. But he does give you a mobile element that people didn't know he had, which is why I think the comparisons start to be so wild like that. And so you got to utilize him if for nothing more than to present the threat on a game by game basis, so teams have to respect it.
Yeah, he's not Vince Young, but is he JJ on his legs?
Yeah.
Is he? Yeah, and I think the answer there is
Devin.
yes. And JJ was pretty good. Uh, you know, so certainly a part of Bryce Underwood's value is the fact that he can move around and he can run in the open field, and he's big and he's a load when he's out there. So yeah, that's there, and that's not something you're going to get out of a spring game. That's for sure.
Yeah, not at all. And so, that will help open up the run game, ease some pressure on the line. Because that my observation was like yours. Now that is something that they can pursue in the portal. Can they find a piece at tackle that is at least as good as what they have in the room? Now that's something that if I'm them, if I can achieve it, I gotta grab another component, another piece of competition. Doesn't matter if I know that it doesn't have to be better. I love to grab better, but at least something as good as what I have to add to the competition. Because there's just that uncertainty, man, leaves me uneasy about where they are at the tackle position, at the left tackle position.
So are we not high on Link anymore? Because that was the talk of the first week of spring practice, and it seems to kind of dissipated.
I mean, they certainly aren't locked in. I mean, Sharon was very candid about that. I'm said we got Evan Link there, we got Babalola there. I think Blake Frazier's a wild card, coming off of injury. We'll see what competition bears, but that's why I'm like, the more competition, the better. And if Link rises to the top out of all the guys, I'm not saying it's not him. I'm just saying it hasn't been determined that it is him. And that to me makes it an issue. If he hasn't shown with experience on the field last year and through fall camp, if Andrew Sprague can show that he's that, Sharon very clearly said Andrew Sprague's the guy. Like, he's the guy.
That's the best news of the spring.
Right. And if you can't say that about Evan Link after playing more games and then having the spring, well, that to me says, hey, let's add even more to that competition just to make sure that we got every option we could possibly have on the bench there. In case, what if that doesn't work? We got another guy that we feel like we can try. I want to try have many pieces to try as I possibly can to get the best possible guy out there. I don't want to be in last year's situation.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, if he's not saying Andrew Link is a starter at one of those tackle spots, they're saying there's a problem. I mean, that's what they're saying. And from what I saw, there's a problem. Now, Babalola, I felt run blocked okay, and he's pretty agile with his feet on some of the doodad blocks, where he hits one guy and then has to come off and get to the next, get to the second level. But his pass blocking isn't there at this point at all. And that position has to.
I feel like you can see some real progression there.
Mm-hmm.
How can you be surprised by where he is?
No, I'm not surprised by it. He's a freshman. How
Right.
many true freshman tackles have ever started at Michigan? And I can think of one, Trezell Jenkins, and that goes back a long, long time.
Tree, I remember Tree.
Yeah, Trezell Jenkins started as a true freshman, was pretty good, but that's in the words of Tony Kornheiser, that's it. That's the list, and so. There's a problem there. Maybe
Mason Cole started as a freshman. He looked pretty all right.
I guess that's true. Was he a tackle at that point?
Yeah, they used him at tackle his freshman year.
Even though he was, yeah.
So,
okay,
and getting back to Sprague, they put him in at right tackle, and they said he was injured for a period of last year too. Mm-hmm. So they put him in at right tackle as a true freshman. He looked okay last year. Now he's locked into a job. Like, that's where these guys come from. Zinter played as a true freshman too in 2020. I mean, that's guard, but that's usually when it happens. That's what you see, right? Mm-hmm. That you see these guys being talked about before they need to be talked about. Then they get in and they survive, and then you're like, okay, let's go, because that jump, especially for an offensive lineman from your freshman year to your sophomore year, is a big jump. So I think that Sprague probably going to be a decent right tackle this year and on his way to being, a really good one for a long time. That's where it comes from. Now, if Link was like that, I think we would have seen it last year.
Yeah, I think again, I keep going back to Blake Frazier as the wild card. I think the issue has been you've been adding a lot of weight to his frame, and for different guys that goes differently when it comes to how their body adapts. And so I'm holding out hope for him as a wild card, and you're looking at the progression of Andrew Babalola, who is, I think, different in his freakiness, different in his football IQ. Could it be that he rounds into form faster than a lot of freshmen? It's certainly possible. We'll see. How flexible is a Brady Norton? Does he become a swing guy in this mix? I mean, you're throwing things around, which is why I say you go in that portal, man, and see what is available. The only way I don't add a guy is if I know it's not as good as what I have, then you don't just bring in a body. But if it's reasonably in the proximity of what I got in that room, I'm adding it. So
yeah. I mean, probably our best case scenario. I'm guessing that there's not going to be a whole lot in the portal right now. Best case scenario is one of these guys is good enough to play to start the season, survive Oklahoma, and then Babalola can come online second half of the season or something.
Yeah, and that could be a workable plan for sure. I think he's going to get bigger. He's going to add some size to some muscle to his frame over the summer. That I think that's going to help. Knowledge of the game helps, and then again, I really like Blake. Blake just hasn't been able to stay healthy. I loved him coming out of high school. He was just light. So I have not given up hope on him as a wild card as well. So I think if they had their druthers, they'd slide. This is my personal opinion. This is not inside information, but I think if they had their druthers, they'd slide Link inside. Is I think what they would do. So, we'll see if it works out that way. We need to talk some defense, though. And we will talk defense on the other side. It's kind of like Brian's write-up, right? I find myself doing the same thing, like talking mostly about the offense when the defense was what shined, right? But, that's why I think we kind of knew that the defense was going to be better in this game, but everyone wants to really talk about and know about what's up with these quarterbacks, what's up with the offensive line, so to speak. So that's what I spend most of the time talking about. We got to get to a break. Be back on the other side, talk some Michigan defense. Return here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTK, online at thebig1050.com.
And we are clear on the radio.
All right, Craig, got to take my kombucha shot.
You guys,
that's how many ounces is that? Can you?
This is a pint.
Okay.
Yeah. So I take like one of these a day. Changed my life, man.
I do too. One a day is the same for me.
They told me last year, like when things got really, really bad, and I was out, felt like I was out a week every other month. They were telling me they were gonna have to remove a section of my colon. They were going to have to remove a section of my colon, and I was gonna have to have that surgery and so I was trying to put it off until after football season. And
this is not a paid endorsement.
Right. This is not a paid endorsement for kombucha, but it is for anybody who has diverticulitis, which I do really, really bad. And so I went in for the colonoscopy, and they said you're going to have a section of your colon removed, or you need to have a section of your colon removed to deal with this. But have diverticulitis throughout it, so you get this section of your colon removed. Who's to say that you don't have some sort of flare up at another section of your colon? So I did not want to have the surgery, but they were telling me that you need to. But I didn't want to miss any part of football season, so I'm trying to figure out ways to how can I make it through football season. Obviously, I have family stuff going on at the same time.
Sure.
And so was trying all kinds of stuff, Metamucil, anything just to make it through. Nothing was working. And so my sister-in-law said, you're trying these fiber supplements. Why don't you try kombucha? Because you might be having you might not be getting your probiotics
Right.
in there as well. And so I started drinking this like a half bottle. I was like, I've noticed, and because I was having to go in for like treatment every other month, and I wound up going 2 months without having to go in for treatment, 3 months not having to go in for a treatment, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months. It's been over a year now since I've had to go in for a treatment. I drink a bottle of kombucha a day. And the doctor is like, well, I don't think it's the kombucha. I think it's your diet.
Quiet, doctor. Quiet.
Diet and exercise and whatever, lady.
This is working.
Whatever, lady. This stuff is working.
If it's whatever you're doing is working, so keep
Yeah.
doing it.
Back in 30.
I don't have that particular problem. I have a somewhat different problem. I have a hiatal hernia from weightlifting when I was trying to repair my shoulder, but the kombucha works for me great. It's been the best thing I've ever done.
If you're listening, kombucha,
maybe they're not paid. Maybe they'll pay us, Sam. Someone.
Yeah, I will be anybody who makes kombucha. I'll be a total endorser. For sure.
Stand by, coming back on radio momentarily.
We got a Buckeye in the building, looks like.
All right, we are back on radio in 5, 4, 3.
We are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA, online at the Big1050.com. Before we get back to the roundtable, want to tell those of you who are in the market for a new car, you should get on board with Brighton Ford. Why, you ask? Because John Cuter and his crew, they're the best around when it comes to taking care of you and finding for you the deals that can't be beaten. That's what they specialize in over at Brighton Ford. So, if you're making it out to 8240 West Grand River Avenue in Brighton, Michigan, going to BrightonFord.com or calling 1-800-NEW-FORD. You want to check out the 2025 Ford F-150 XLT. You can get into one of those for $286 a month, $3,500 down, or $418 a month with $500 down. Or how about the 2025 Ford Explorer Active, $375 a month with $3,500 down, or $463 a month with $500 down. And last but not least, the 2025 Ford Bronco Big Bend, $459 a month, $3,500 down, or $593 a month with $500 down. For those other great deals, get on board with Brighton Ford. We're going to BrightonFord.com, call 1-800-NEW-FORD, or make it out to the lot at 8240 West Grand River Avenue in Brighton, Michigan. With that, let's get back to our conversation, our Michigan spring game recap with the MGoBlog Roundtable crew. So, Brian, going over to the defense where, it's not like we saw all the stars on defense, and yet those that we did see, some of them had star-like turns that left me, I'm sure left you very encouraged.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing that was the flip side of the fact that nobody was open is nobody was open. And we didn't really see much or maybe any of Jair Hill and Zeke Berry. So the cornerbacks were largely Pick a Metcalf, and Josiah Edmond. Jeremiah Lowe actually stood out to me. Like I thought he had an excellent game. He had the interception. He had a PBU against Morgan. He got knocked over once by Morgan, but I thought that he showed fairly well. And then Shamari Earls picked the number 2, and that kind of means something as a Michigan cornerback. He's a true freshman, but he just physically looks like he might be an heir apparent there.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, the secondary looked phenomenal, even without their, putative starters at corner. And I thought the Metcalfs both looked good. I thought Earls was good. Malo was fantastic. They've got Rod Moore coming back. You got other guys. And in fact, maybe when you see a guy like Jaden McBurroughs transfer, you realize that he perceives that there's, too many good guys in this room. And to some extent, you're unhappy when you see a guy who's been here and has been working is transferring out. On the other hand, you say, well, that, they've got something going here. Same with the linebackers. I felt the linebacking play, the backups. I thought the Sullivan kid was good.
Yeah, Cole Sullivan.
So,
Jason Hewlett was a direct response to Cole Sullivan. Direct response.
Oh, you could see how deep they're, because I mean they got Bulls coming in later, and they're holding him back. They're like, no, man, you don't have to rush back from your injury. You take your time. Because I was looking at the draft class this year for linebackers, and like 4 out of the top 6 guys are all players that Michigan picked on in 2023 or 24. I remember scouting these guys and being like, okay, that's the weakness of that defense, and those are the best linebackers in the draft right now. Now they talented guys, but I think everything really kind of came up roses for Michigan. They're really lucky to get back 2 NFL caliber players. On top of that, they got Rolder, back safe, right? Like he's been injured, right?
He made it through the entire spring. I didn't even write it. He didn't miss a single practice.
Yeah.
It was like, and I remember when CP was here, like they were like, man, if we could just get this dude to make it through a spring, to make it through and not get hurt. That would be right. He made it through the entire spring, didn't miss a practice.
So there's 3 all Big Ten guys that you weren't sure you were going to have. And man, we got Cole Sullivan coming up. Cole Sullivan's interesting to me because he looks like he could play edge as well. So they can do a lot of that barroom stuff with him. And
Curtis looks like he could play edge.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. You're right.
I'm writing an article about him and the big nickel, because this is something you've seen a lot with other teams, and something that Michigan's going to need. It's just 2 X's and O's for the radio show, but like Michigan's going to see a lot of double tight ends, and then they go spread with those guys. And if you have TJ Guy out there in that position, he can get a little exposed in coverage. If you have a guy like if you have a weird safety defensive end dude out there, that actually can work for you. He can still set an edge in the run game because he's got that length, that size, and then you want to send a tight end down the field, like good luck, right? So I'm really excited. I think that's something that Wink Martindale did a lot with his defenses in Baltimore and New York, and it's not something that it did really well with Michigan, because last year when they tried it was Quentin Johnson, who just doesn't have the size to be a force in the run game or blitz. This year, if they can do that with Curtis, you got a guy.
Yeah, and you mentioned Cole Sullivan being flexible and being able to do some of that edge stuff. I think Cole Sullivan's emergence allows them more flexibility with Barham, because the plan with Jay Sean has been very interesting in its evolution, because initially part of the retention plan was, hey, scouts are telling him you're Micah Parsons in the league, right? You're gonna be that edge guy that we move all over the line, find different rush angles for you, drop you back occasionally, but you're an on the ball, coming off, blowing off the edge, getting after the quarterback guy. And so that was part of the retention plan. But he's like, well, I could do that. That sounded good at first. Scouts are definitely saying that. But, how many snaps is that a game? Am I on the field all the time? Because you rotate a lot with the defensive line. And now you got TJ Guy looking really good. Demo's back. Maybe this shouldn't be a full-time move. And, you look at how he played the second half of the season, fellas, and he really came on. It didn't look that great early in the year. Looked like it was a lot of overhype. But then he really started to come on, and they said he got in camp. And it's like, dude, like the stuff he was doing from the stack position was like, he is wrecking stuff. But then when you bring him up and have him play edge, he's wrecking stuff there too. So you actually want to have him do some of both. Where do you use him? Well, Cole Sullivan actually allows you to let him do some more of that without losing too much of what you were getting from him when he playing in the stack alignment.
And Mason Curtis too. Both of that, like that big nickel, is actually what gives you the access to more linebacker blitzes. He blew up a play in the spring game too. It was one of the times I was like, "Whoa, who was that?" And I kind of waited for the pile to undo itself, and and there's number one. I'm like, oh, of course, number one. It was I understand wanting to keep him on the field. He was grading out very well to me by the end of last season. Now, a lot of that is because when he runs into a guard, that guard falls on his butt, and the quarterback is a dead man. That's just something you can't teach, right? When he comes in, he has that force that you couldn't even get that from Devin Bush, right? It's just the size that he has and the ability to move. His zone drops have always been, weak, but that's. I mean, that was a Junior Colson problem too, right? We can survive that.
But they say he got better. Now we got to see it. But he looked better in the second half of the season. Like he looked totally lost. First, it's like, oh my God, he's a non-play on passing downs. It's like, I mean, I know I was saying that about him and Houseman at first, and then it was like after the Texas game, Ernest Houseman really came on because I know
Houseman was fine.
Yeah,
Houseman's.
Well, they were talking about replacing him with Rolder after the Texas game. That's how bad it was. And then he just really flipped the switch, and it was like, dude. Then after that, it was like, oh, can you play Barham on passing downs? And then of course he got better. So the linebackers really came along. And if the progression has continued with Jay Sean the way they say it has, wow. And Rolder's healthy. And Cole Sullivan. Now, this is the spot where I think Craig is spot on. I think they are going to be unquestionably better at linebacker. Zero doubt. I think they're going to be elite there. I think the edges collectively are going to be better too. Are you guys buying Dom Nichols being a factor in the rotation?
Well, he's the guy who, when Sharon was asked about the defensive ends, it was like, we have the two starters, we have Dom Nichols, and then we have Cam Brandt. So he was like pretty explicitly number 3 in that rotation. So yeah, I do think that he'll be on the 2 deep and be a factor this year.
Yeah, and then you can still slide Barham in there too.
Well, also you have, remember we talked about the progression with Sprague, right? He played a lot. Nichols did last year, and they were having him do a lot of difficult things as a true freshman in a room that had, plenty of bodies that they could have thrown at defensive end. So when you see a guy that they're trusting to be on the field as a true freshman, it's usually a sign he's pretty good and is going to take a big step forward as a sophomore. The fact that, he's being brought up now doesn't surprise me, just because he was already one of those 4. Obviously, you got Guy, you got Moore. Those are your dudes, but, you need 4, and you need to be able to rotate. I was kind of hoping to hear more, and I think we saw more. It's just hard to tell from, just seeing it one time and not having video of Lugard Adepayi and Devin Baxter, because those guys are really edge rusher benders, right? Guys who are just going to get around a tackle and cause that ruckus when you have someone out there like that. Even Barham's not really that guy, right? Barham's someone who he comes in. I mean, he's got the athleticism, but I don't know if he can bend like Uche, right?
Yeah, they were. I don't know. Again, we got to see it, but they were just like, man, when he's been an edge, when they put him there, because they didn't put him there all the time like they initially had planned. They put him there. He looked like he might be the best guy. So I'm waiting to see if that really translates.
Fair, he's fast, but like I'd love to see one or both of Adepayi and Baxter bust out, because having that Ojabo that you can throw in there is just such a weapon, and I'd like to have Barham as an option to blitz down the middle when those guys are out there too.
Yeah, you know what I came away with those guys just thinking they need to add some more weight. That's where I came away thinking. So we'll see. We'll see how it works out. Real quick, because I want to get a quick draft take from you guys, but yeah, your quick takes on the interior, the defensive tackles, that position group. What did you think about them?
I mean, when I go into a spring game, there are position groups that I'm just like, we're not going to learn about this position group. We're going to learn about the position group that goes up against them. And that's how I felt about the defensive tackles. You have, 3 guys who are established power 4 defensive tackles, and then you have guys like Pierce and Nwuna kind of behind them. But for me, I was just, I thought it was a good sign that, generally the defensive tackles were not in the backfield every single play. That was what I was hoping for. Because that you're going to get a certain level of play out of those guys because they've had hundreds of snaps already.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The most thing I learned about watching the defensive line was that I always get his name wrong. Nate Afobe, pushed him out of the way. And that was like one of those moments where it's like, okay, maybe they got a guy there. And I know Lawrence Target's here in fall, so that right guard job is going to be up for grabs. Evan Link might slide over there too. I'm not like handing him the job, but I'm excited to see him play, especially because he was a very high ceiling recruit that barely got to play high school football. So, you know, if he's already there, then we got something with Afobe.
Did Pele get some snaps? I think he did.
He did.
Yes, he big.
But it's just like, I mean, that's just another 325-pounder they have. They seem to have like 12 of them. Everybody's like, they're huge inside. If nothing else, they're huge.
Yeah. And they all look like boxes. They're just box people.
This is like the post Mozzie Smith generation, right? Everyone's like, "Ooh, I'm gonna go be him." But that's really what this defense was based on, right? Like we had Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, so we used those guys to pass rush a bit, and then just kind of seal it off the edges. But the way this defense was originally designed was for big guys like that, just have all that meat in there, and the fact that you have, you know, you can go 6 deep with these guys. I think that's great because you can really have them play all out and then rotate them off, and no one's got to play even 50% of the snaps.
Yeah.
So real quick, do you guys think Michigan gets 4 in the first round? Do you buy this talk that Mason's gonna fall out of the top 10, Will Johnson's gonna fall out of the first round like some naysayers are saying?
No, I don't think that's gonna happen. I mean, you know, by the time you get to the end of the first round, you're looking at Will Johnson. You're like, I can fix him, right? Like,
the Mason Graham talk is we knew this when he was a recruit. I was like, the NFL people, when he gets to the combine, they're gonna hate this guy.
I mean, like, oh, he's got short arms.
Right. We knew this. This was in the scouting report that like as soon as this happens, he's gonna start falling down, and they're gonna talk themselves out of Mason Graham, and that's great. Maybe he'll follow away the Lions.
Yeah.
Well, the Lions, I think Kenneth Grant may fall to around 20, 21.
He's moving up again now, though.
Well, if that's plausible, the Lions should get rid of Jameson Williams and move.
No way!
Get rid of that guy.
Get
rid of him.
You can keep Jameson.
Get rid of him
and still trade him again, Jamon. I know we got to go. If he falls, I doubt he falls past 15 with the Falcons. Just remember I said that. We got to get out of here, folks. Thanks for watching another edition of the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA, online at the Big 1050.